Hello everyone, this is Joe from Scarecrow Joe's Studio. Welcome back to part 2 of the troll tutorial. So let's get right down to it. We'll go over the tools and materials needed for this section of the tutorial. Alright, tools and materials for this part of the tutorial. Well, first of all, you're going to need either your balloon form that you strip mached, or your little round balls that you strip mached. I have several of them here. So you'll need those. You're going to need your round canister. If you don't have a round canister, such as like a Pringles canister or an instant oatmeal canister, that's okay, because we're actually going to make our own little round platform for our troll in this tutorial. And so you'll need a ruler, not so much for measuring, but for creating a straight line. So you can actually use a piece of a cardboard. Doesn't necessarily have to be a ruler, but I just happen to have a ruler. You'll need your blade. I have this box cutter. You can use a serrated steak knife if you have one. You're going to need a marker of some sort. You'll need some various smoothing or sculpting tools. Here again, my go-to little sculpting tools that I always use, basic little plastic things. If you don't have anything like that, plastic spoons work great. Plastic butter knives, or a metal butter knife or a metal spoon works fine too. So we'll use those for sculpting. And then you will need hot glue gun, glue sticks. You'll need some masking tape, and then you're also going to need some thicker corrugated cardboard. Now I have 2 different pieces here because I wanted to show you. You don't want to use this kind that has like this slick glossy the slick glossy design or anything on it. You don't want to use that. It's too hard to cut through, and the clay doesn't really stick to it very well, so don't use that. Just use a plain piece of where there's no slick surface to it at all, no design or anything like that. So you definitely need that. What really comes in handy is I use a scrap piece of this is a 2-inch PVC, or probably 1-inch PVC pipe. And I'll show you what I use that for. I use that to curl the cardboard around. It makes it really easy to use. You can use a rolling pin, or you can just use your hands. This is just something that I use, so I wanted to show you. You're also going to need some paper mache clay. I already have a batch made up. This is way more than what I'm going to need. But as usual, I'm working on some other things simultaneously. So I have more than what I need. And then you'll also need your paper mache clay, which is just the basic mixture of flour and water to a thin pancake batter consistency. And you'll need some paintbrushes, a small paintbrush and maybe a slightly bigger paintbrush. And we're going to use these to apply the paste over our clay to help smooth it out some. That's it. I think that's all that you're going to need for this tutorial. So let's get moving to the first part in assembling our armature for our troll. Let's start out by gathering up the materials that you're going to need to assemble your armature, and we're going to make the base for the Viking troll, because the Viking troll is going to be bigger than my little guy that I'm going to be working on for my orthodontist. I'm going to be making my own base out of this piece of cardboard. So the first thing that you're going to want to do, get your hot glue gun plugged in. You're going to need some masking tape. Let's get this. Tear off a big piece of masking tape and stick it on the corner of your table or whatever workspace that you're working on. And then we're going to determine now how big or how thick we want this base. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm looking at my balloon here, and I'm looking at the diameter of the balloon. So I'm thinking, I don't want it too big. I'm going to say maybe, let's see here. I'll do 3 inches. So it's going to be 3 inches thick. So I'm going to go ahead, take my ruler, and I'll just make a mark there. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight, you guys. Don't stress about that. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm not going to use this entire length. You can use the entire length. It's not going to matter very much. And then the easiest thing to do is use your blade. And I'm going to go ahead and just cut my strip of corrugated cardboard. Now obviously, if you have a nice table, you're not going to be wanting to cut against your nice table. Put a few pieces of cardboard down and then cut over that, or do it on the ground somewhere. Alright, so I have this here. This is where my piece of PVC pipe that I use here as kind of a rolling pin comes in handy. So I just take it from the bottom and I just roll it. Now, if you don't have a piece of scrap PVC pipe, you can use a rolling pin, you can use a wooden dowel, anything cylindrical that'll help you form your base. So there you have it. Just like that. Alright, so before I tape this together, I'm going to use the fatter part, or the bottom of the balloon. Kind of stick that on there. Use it kind of as a guide. So that's a little too thick. So I want to make this a little bit smaller. I'm thinking right about there. And this is going to give me plenty of room to sculpt in his legs and put his feet in there. And now that I'm looking at it, I think it's a little too thick. I think I want to cut this down a little bit more. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut it down just a little bit. Easy fix. Again, it does not have to be perfect. Sorry if my arm is in the way. It's hard filming these things when you're doing it alone. So forgive me if my arm or my head or anything gets in the way. Alright, I think I like that. So this turns out to be a little over 2 inches. I'm just going to reform that with my PVC pipe. Something like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. So at that point, this is where you're going to go ahead, get your piece of masking tape, and tape it. Tape it in place. So that you're holding that edge in place. There we go. Form it back out so that it's round. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and get that same piece of corrugated cardboard that I was using. Take my marker. Kind of trace around that. You can use your blade, or if you have a heavy pair of scissors, that'll work too. So just go ahead and cut that out. And as you can see, it's not perfectly round. It doesn't have to be. It's fine. Because what we're going to do is glue this to the bottom of our cylinder that we just created. And you can go ahead and trim around that if you want. No big deal. So we're going to go ahead and glue this to the bottom or to the base of our cylinder that we just created. So you want a heavy, good amount of glue in there. Just hold that in place. Let that hot glue set. And if you notice, see, it's not even sitting completely flat on there. That's fine. I got this little flap here. I think I'm going to go ahead and I'll just glue that down a little. There we go. Just like that. Cools. Once it cools enough, you pick it up, and what I like to do is where the two edges meet, I just put a little bit more hot glue in there. Get another hot glue stick. You're going to chew through some, or you won't chew through. You're going to go through some hot glue sticks. Creating this. I use a lot of hot glue sticks. It's probably the most expensive thing that I use, but I find it to be necessary. So a little tip here, because I have my nice, well, it's not nice, it's just a plastic like patio folding table that I have, that I use a lot, but I cover it with a piece of plastic because once I get my clay and my paste and all that junk on there, I can easily just wipe it off and not have to worry about cleaning my table every time. And then I can just remove the piece of plastic sheeting, toss it, or reuse it as many times as I want. But the downfall to that is that when you're applying hot glue, and you just saw me struggle, hot glue will drip onto the plastic and then it'll stick. So if you have parchment paper, like cooking parchment paper, that really helps. It won't stick to that, and you won't have that problem with like I just had. I should have done that. Should have laid that down prior, but I didn't, so it's okay. All right, now once this is completely, or doesn't have to be completely, but set, we're going to go ahead and we'll take our balloon, and we're going to attach or hot glue the balloon, the bigger base or the bottom of the balloon, onto the base of our cylinder, cardboard cylinder that we just formed. So again, I'm just going to come in here, good amount of hot glue on the edge. Kind of look at it from all angles to make sure that you have it upright and it's not tilted too far back to one side or too far forward, anything like that. This is your opportunity before it sets to kind of look at it in all angles. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and take my hot glue and put another healthy amount around the bottom where it's connected to the cardboard cylinder. Now you see what I mean about the hot glue? I just ripped through like 2 of them just like that. I do recommend getting a full-size hot glue gun, not a mini one. The mini ones don't seem to last as long, and then you're going to go through like so many, you're going to constantly be putting hot glue sticks into your glue gun. So again, we're just going to go ahead, we're going to wait for this to set before we move forward. All right, let's make some feet. So corrugated cardboard again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my armature up here, and the feet are nothing special. They're really, really simple. They're really, really easy. And what I do is I just go ahead and draw in some flat feet with some toes. How many toes do you want? That's completely up to you. You can have 3 toes, 2 toes, 4 toes, whatever amount of toes that you want. I'm going to give my guy 3 toes. I like going with the 3 toes for some reason. Alright, so basically that is my foot shape. There's my foot shape. So I've got 1 foot drawn. I'm doing 3 toes. What I do suggest is that you do want to leave a gap in between your toes. You're going to cut this out and we're going to apply clay to them. If you have not a gap in between them, you're going to have a harder time getting clay in between these areas that are going to have a void in between them. So basically this is what I do. I do one foot just like that. I'm going to remove him, and I'm going to go ahead and just draw the rest of his foot out like that. Give him a good enough space here. Just like that. I'm going to use my pair of scissors for this. I'm going to make this easier to see, so I'm just going to cut this off. There we go. So there's my foot. I'm going to go ahead and use my scissors. You're going to want a good heavy pair of scissors for this. And again, does not have to be perfect. Okay, so I have my 1 foot cut out. Now if you want to make your toes, one of your toes longer than the others, go ahead and do that, or you can make them all the same size, whatever your preference is. So I've got 1 foot. I'm going to go ahead and trace this. Trace this foot out. And I'm going to cut that one out as well. Okay, now I have my 2 feet, just like that. They're not perfect because they don't have to be. So the next step, what we are going to do, get our cardboard armature that we assembled. We're going to sit that on top of our feet, just like that. Position your feet. How do you want them? Do you want them sticking out to the side? Let me turn this guy so you can see it better. You want them kind of sticking out to the side like that? Do you want them facing straight forward? Go ahead, figure out how you want your feet positioned. You're not going to need, like, you can see how long this is. You're not going to need that entire length. What you're doing is you're determining the position of your feet. So you want them sticking out probably about that far. They can stick out a little farther if you want. I kind of like that right there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to go ahead and mark around that area right here, so I know that's where I want my feet to be positioned when I go ahead and glue them. Now if you have excess in the back, sticking out in the back there, you'll want to trim that off. I have a little bit right there, so I'm not going to worry about that. But if it's sticking out, you're going to want to go ahead and trim that off, because you don't need that sticking out. All right, I have his feet repositioned. Take that off of there. Take my hot glue, and I'm going to put hot glue all around this portion where where the feet are going to be stuck to the base of our armature. Just like that. After that dries, we're going to go ahead and apply some more hot glue around the bottom area there where it's touching, where it's connected, and then we'll flip them over and we'll do the same thing on the bottom area as well. Okay, so I let that cool. Then I applied another healthy amount of hot glue where it connects, where his feet connect to his base. And I applied a little bit in these areas as well. Now the next step, and this is going to be the final step of this segment of our part 2 tutorial on our trolls, is we're going to go ahead and apply clay to the bottom of this base and his feet, so that when we go to apply clay to the rest of him, he's going to have a nice solid dry base that will be able to hold and withstand the clay and the other elements that we're going to be adding onto him. So that is our next step. So you're going to need your paper mache clay and your paper mache paste. You're going to need your paper mache clay and your paper mache paste. This is pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and cover the entire bottom portion of your armature of the base here. Make sure you get around the edges as well. How much clay? Well, you want at least enough clay so that you're filling in these gaps in between the pieces of cardboard that we have glued down. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to go ahead and apply all that clay on there. I'm also going to apply clay on the bottom of the feet as well. Alright, so I went ahead and I just applied a layer of clay over the bottom of the feet here and the toes. And then I also applied a layer of clay around the base here where we glued on that first piece, and then we glued the feet over that. So you want it to be a nice, somewhat even. It doesn't have to be completely even. It's going to be fine. If you think you've got clay, more clay on one area than another area, don't even worry about that. And then I put a layer of clay around the edge here. So now when this dries, we're going to have a really nice solid base to work off of. So what I like to do, I'll sit them down and kind of make sure that I kind of press them down on an even surface. Just sort of like that. Alright, now you're going to take your paste. This is where the paste comes in with your paintbrush. If your paste has been sitting for a little bit, stir it. It tends to thicken up a little after it's been sitting for a little while. So go ahead and stir it. If you need to add a little bit more water to it because it's gotten too thick, add more water to it. So I'm just go ahead and what I'm doing is I'm just applying the paste with my paintbrush over the clay that I've applied to the bottom portion of the base and the feet here. And then I'm going to take one of my sculpting tools. If you don't have something like this, a spoon will work. See how that works just as well? Back end of the spoon. And you're just smoothing it over. Just like that. Again, this is the bottom, so nobody's really going to see the bottom except for you. We're going to paint it really nice on the bottom. This is just so that it has an more even surface. All right, just like that. Now I want to come in, do the same thing. Put paste all around the clay that I applied to the base, or the edge of the base. And if you notice how I did not use any strip mache before applying the clay to this cardboard, because I find it to be unnecessary, because the clay is going to stick really well and dry very hard on the cardboard, on this corrugated cardboard. The other thing I'm doing is around the edge of the toes here. I'll come in there, smooth that out a little bit on the areas where you're going to see them a little bit more. And again, come in and smooth that completely. Get it as smooth as you possibly can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but smooth it out. You don't want it to be lumpy You don't have to get completely around the bottom of the toes because we're going to go in later and we're going to fix all of that. So don't even worry about that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take my time and smooth out this clay. There you have it. I took the time again, smoothed out that clay, smoothed the clay around the base here where those connections meet, spread out the clay as evenly as I possibly could. And then in between his toes, where I had some buildup of clay in between the toes, I just went in, and you could use, if you don't have any sculpting tools, if you have a butter knife, you can just go in there just like that, kind of press in, so you still have those spaces or those gaps in between his toes. There you go. So that's what it looks like. And at this point, we're going to wrap up part 2. We have to let this dry. It will take a couple of days to dry at least. Put it in front of a fan. If you have, well, you're going to need something to sit it inside. Something like this. I have just a plastic bucket here. So get a plastic container or something like that. You can even do that. Stick them in there like that. That's probably what I'm going to do. And I'm going to, again, with all wet paper mache, whether it's strip mache or clay, I always go and put it in front of a fan. Any kind of like box fan. It doesn't even have to be on high. It could be on a low setting. No big deal. And it'll dry a lot faster, and then you will avoid mold issues. So this is going to take a couple of days. I'll let that dry. We'll come back and we'll start the next segment here. One thing that I do want to point out, as these toes dry, they will tend to droop. But it's kind of cool. I like the effect because it gives you that kind of raised toe or foot look to the troll. I think it lends it a little more interest and more whimsical aspects to it. Okay, so anyway, again, I'm gonna let that dry. We'll come back next segment. We're going to assemble the arms. And we're going to start applying clay to the body and to the head and sculpting out the features. So, what I suggest is that if you don't already have your plastic eyes, if you're wanting to use those, get those, and your polymer clay. If you're going to buy that online or go to like a art and craft store, Michael's has that. I like Michael's. Pick that stuff up. So your polymer clay, I prefer Sculpey. You can use Fimo, but any kind of oven baked polymer clay is going to work. We're going to use that to form the hands and some of the other elements of the Viking troll, like his little drinking horn, and we'll also create his little axe, and maybe we'll even make a shield. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, thanks for watching. Next segment, part 3, coming up as soon as I can get to it. As soon as this dries, we'll be right back at it. Take care, guys. See you soon. Bye.